Okay, so we're ready to get started. Welcome everyone to today's session, Perfecting Onboarding, how your CSMs can deliver immediate value. So we decided to do this topic because we hear very frequently, my team struggles in demonstrating immediate value, like in the first 14 to 30 days of onboarding. And, especially today, when you think about, a lot of businesses offering free trials, month-to-month contracts, they let their customers self-serve, right? And there's really low switching costs to modern day software. Delivering value quickly and those quick wins that make the customer really kind of latch onto your business and your brand is really, really important to getting off on the right foot. So we're going to explore this today. We're speaking to two CS leaders from top technology companies, and we'll discuss how to infuse quick wins into the onboarding programs. And we're going to get into it in just a minute, but I'm certainly very happy to be here with our two panelists today. We've got Greg Bond, VP of Customer Success from SharpSpring, and Christian Kuehne, Director of Customer Success from GamePlan. It's going to be a great discussion, and we're going to talk a lot about how to craft onboarding to include these quick wins, why it's important, the impact that it can have for your company. They're going to highlight 3 ways to demonstrate immediate value, and then we're going to spend some time talking about how you can scale your program. Okay. And so anyway, before we get started, a few housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded, and we're going to provide everybody access to the recording after the webinar is over. We'll send out the slides. We'll post our recording on our YouTube channel. Also, we're going to have a few polls throughout the conversation. So we're going to ask some feedback from the audience about how they do things, and then we're going to talk about that during the discussion. And lastly, if you have any questions for the panelists, please type them into the question box. I'll be monitoring that along the way. And if we can bring those into the discussion as we go along, we'll definitely do so. Okay, so now let's, for a moment, just quickly introduce the speakers. My name is Dan Bonham. I'm Chief Revenue Officer at UserIQ. We offer a platform that helps businesses realize the full value of customer success by equipping them with product data, customer insights, and user engagement tools to help them fight churn and grow their accounts. I'm going to be facilitating the discussion today. Next up, we've got Christian. Christian, if you mind, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do for GamePlan.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Christian Kuehne. Born and raised in Germany. I moved over to the US when I was 18 as a collegiate tennis player, and then have lived here since that. I actually started my career as a college coach for Florida State University and a couple other universities before jumping into the software space about 6 years ago. GamePlan, we're an educational company specifically for college and professional athletes. So I oversee our team that works with over 200 college athletic departments and professional leagues like the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, and youth organizations as well. So yeah, thanks for having me. Excited for the conversation.
Yeah, awesome, Christian. Thanks for joining us today. Next up, we have Greg. Greg, if you don't mind taking a moment, introducing yourself and a little bit about what you do for SharpSpring.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me on here, guys. And I'm Greg Bonham, the VP of Customer Success at SharpSpring. I started at SharpSpring back in May in the middle of the pandemic. There's a lot of change, a lot of things going on within the organization, and we were sort of moving from an account management function to a customer success function, moving from an operational, where the department used to go into the operational part of the organization, to the revenue side of the organization and being much more proactive. So I was brought in to just kind of help grow and scale that team, focus a little bit more on revenue growth and how we can kind of set our partners up for long-term success. So it's been fun, and it's been exciting. But prior to working at SharpSpring, worked in a number of account management, sales management, running teams that did that for a couple of different organizations across multiple industries: media, entertainment, sports, UGC, immersive VR technology, and even hospitality. So excited to be here and excited for the conversation ahead.
Yeah, awesome, Greg. Nice to have you here, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jump in. And the first thing we want to do is a poll question to understand where everybody stands today as it relates to delivering quick wins to their customers. So the question is, my company delivers quick wins early in the onboarding process. If everybody could just take a few moments to respond to this, we'll leave the poll open for about 30 to 45 seconds, giving you a chance to answer, and then we'll talk about the results. Okay, so we got the results in. Thanks everybody for participating in that. It looks like when asked, my company delivers tangible quick wins early in the onboarding process. 70% or so of the people said that was true. 10% said it's not true, and 21% don't know. So let's go ahead and talk about this for a second. Greg, how do you react to those numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's.
Where'd my stuff go?
Well, I'll keep going while you look for the slide deck. But I think those
that's really strange.
Those numbers are encouraging. One, if people they know they're delivering quick wins, I think it's great because it's essential, right? If you can't deliver quick wins, your churn rate's going to be extremely high, and you're going to have trouble keeping customers on your platform. So yeah, I mean, I think that's great. I think it was interesting too to see the don't knows. I don't know if I'm delivering quick wins, and I think that's something that we'll get into a little bit later in this webinar too, and talking about what that looks like. And I think that's a common problem. So
yeah. Christian, any thoughts from you on the results of the poll?
Yeah, I was going to chime in on the don't know part as well. I think that's where I think for us, we were like an early startup, and that's where really we kind of had the issue initially on like, how do we actually know if we're delivering early, right? We're trying everything, we're doing that, but how do I know that A, we're getting wins, and B, those are wins that our customers actually care and value, and not just we as a company value. So right. I think identifying what those wins are for a customer, but then also just having the ability to track it and actually identifying it, I think is huge. And I know it's going to be a topic later, but I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah, very good, cool. All right, so let's jump into our first topic. And so related to that poll question, so let's talk about why quick wins are important and how quick should they be. So the question is, what are the quick wins that you guys seek to deliver, right, early on in your onboarding process, and how do you measure them? And if you guys could provide a couple, specific examples to your business, that would be awesome. Christian, do you mind leading us off with this one?
Yeah, no, and I think just a little bit of background. So we're an educational provider, and our usual length of a deal would be a year or two. So we'd have 1-year deals or 2-year agreements. So that kind of changes for us a little bit what we consider a quick win. So I think for the first year, what we usually work up is like a 30, 45, 60-day program where we want to deliver one thing with the first 30 days and then 1 or 2 within 45 or 60. And that does expand out a little bit to like a 30, 60, 90 usually when we're doing 2-year agreements. So we do kind of space it out a little bit, but I think the way we see it and kind of our churn data kind of says it back, is it just kind of really sets the tone for that entire relationship and really gives you a cushion for, if things might go south or if things don't work out quite as well in the middle of a relationship, right? You're kind of starting off with on a high note and you're kind of operating from there versus, we're 4 or 5 months in, maybe the customers are already looking at a new solution, right? Because they haven't really seen wins yet, or they haven't really seen anything positive yet. So for us, that's really important. The way we kind of look at it is we have certain educational things on our platform that are ready to go that really a customer could say, hey, we can onboard that in 5 to 10 days. And what we usually do throughout the sales process is really try and identify kind of the main person at the organization that can make those calls and say, here's what we want to educate. Here's the most pressing thing that our student athletes, for example, want to see. So this fall, social justice and voter education kind of became the main topic. What we would do with new customers is, before we even host the onboarding call around everything else that our platform has to offer, we would host a call and say, how can we get this education out to your athletes now and have them through it while we're completing the rest of the onboarding call? And so that was always what we tried, given a time frame of like 30 days, because our education does go pretty fast on that, and kind of measure that in terms of completion data, but then also our courses show data around how are your athletes actually enjoying the courses, right? So we're kind of giving them two metrics on, 100% of your athletes are now educated on the voting process, and they're feeling in some ways about the platform they're now using. So those are kind of the two ways we bring them back. And then we actually get our marketing team involved, similar to what we do on a sales process, to create some type of asset that person can then share with, whether it's their boss or a committee or whoever it is on that campus, to really kind of sell the success of that early engagement. Because what we usually see is there's one person that really kind of pushes the purchase. So for them, a big win is showing their colleagues, showing their boss that, I advocated for this platform and it's really helping. So we kind of see the second win as, hey, this worked really well, but here's how we can help you kind of sell it to the rest of your athletics department, right? To do that. And then for
I think I was going to say, I think you made a great point, like helping the buyer validate their purchase, right? By showing something right out of the gate is so important, because the longer it takes, the less good they're going to feel about what they just bought.
Yeah. And I think for us, the really including sales and kind of seeing what were those discussions like during the sales process, to see what does that person mostly care about as the most pressing topic off the bat, has been really helpful for us, of, kind of cutting that time frame a little shorter, where you're already kind of stepping in with that, and then really focusing just on helping them sell it, to their colleagues, and helping them sell it across their organization is kind of the third win we look at. And we usually track that around, how many people actually onboarded involved from an administrative perspective. But that's kind of how we treat the first, 60, 90 days.
Great. Thanks, Christian. Greg, how do you guys do this?
Yeah, so just to give a little bit of context on SharpSpring, we're a marketing automation platform, and kind of do sales automation as well as marketing automation, because we have a CRM component too. And I think one of the big challenges with a big platform like ours is, when people buy it, they're super excited. They've seen a demo, and that demo is of a completed instance. There's data in it. There's stuff happening, right? And so they come in, they buy, they're really excited, and they unwrap their gift, and it's an empty instance of SharpSpring, and there's a lot to build, right? And so our first quick win is we get on a kickoff call. We try to keep that kickoff call as close to sale as possible. And we get in there with our team, and we immediately go, okay, let's get some stuff set up in here. Let's get your tracking code on your website. Let's get your mail sync set up. Let's get your social listening going. Let's make sure we get CNAME records on your hosting all set up. So data's coming in, right? We want them to see that this tool is going to work, and it's going to give them some visibility that they didn't have previously. That visibility would be the first key for us.
Okay.
And then number two for us is we very quickly, after that first kickoff call, after we kind of show them around and get them oriented with the product, we move into a strategy conversation where we want to understand, what is your desired outcome? Why did you buy? What was the thing that you saw that you really liked, that you really wanted to do, that made you purchase, that made you make that choice to move forward? And then we try to deliver that as quickly as possible. And kind of like what Christian said, we have a team that's going to take that initial value that you're looking for, that desired outcome, and they're going to go work on building it while we educate you on the true value of the platform and the other things that you can do here. So, we really try to get you to a point where you're experiencing the value within 15 to 30 days. It's going to take you a long time to build out your SharpSpring instance and get a full marketing automation. But 60-day onboarding for us, you're at least introduced to the true value of the platform. You have your initial value working, and everything's kind of set up and running. And then we'll continue to iterate that over time throughout the lifetime value of the customer.
Yeah, and I've had that happen to me a couple of times, and I thought it was really, I thought it made the vendor stand out, where it's like, hey, this is a bigger implementation, right? It might take 60 days before everything is set up, all the data is flowing, and you're actually using it. But like, here's one thing we can do for you, right? And they'll do it, right? They're not relying on me or my team to set it up. They're like, let's just knock this out for you. We can, knock it out in 2 weeks, and you'll at least be getting some tangible value out of what you bought really quickly. And then you continue to carry on with the rest of the implementation. But at least you feel like you got something quick.
For sure. And I mean, it's critical because, you see that people, if they're not experiencing any sort of value in the first couple of weeks, they start to disengage in onboarding. You get 3-4 weeks in and they go dark, they miss their meetings, and you can tell. You're like, hey, we haven't delivered enough wins for these people early enough, and now they're starting to attrit. Or they're zombies. They're zombie customers. They're going to attrit at some point. They're not doing anything.
That's right. And it's so important because they're usually coming off of the sales process like on a high. And how do you keep that momentum and that positive energy going? By doing these quick wins early in the process along the way allows that to keep happening. So makes a lot of sense. So good stuff. So let's go into the next question, right? So this all sounds pretty good and it's easy, but I would imagine that it's not exactly, it's easy to say we should deliver quick wins to customers. It's not always easy to actually do that, right? As you guys mentioned, right? Everybody's solution is different. Some, have a typical 90-day implementation time. So how do you carve off some things that, might resonate value in the first 2 weeks? And is that always possible? So the question here for y'all is, what are some common challenges to delivering value early in the process, let's say in the first 2 to 3 weeks? And how are you able to overcome those and make something happen for your customers?
Yeah, I mean,
sorry. Yeah, Greg, if you can leave this one, I got to address this to one of you, or I'll just sit here and wait. Greg, if you can start, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of challenges in this. I mean, for one, I think the most important one that you need to address is you got to understand your customers. You got to understand what they find valuable. I mean, we have 6 different things that we believe the vast majority of our customers want when they buy marketing automation. So identifying which one of those things it is helps us to almost tailor their onboarding experience, the order with which we cover parts of the application. I mean, the application is massive. There's so many things you can do in there. It's a Swiss Army knife. You can do pretty much anything you want. But if I know what you find valuable, then I can prioritize those things and I can get those set up immediately, quickly. Now, the other challenge that I think we find and we run into often, and we were kind of joking about this before we started, was, sometimes your customers, it requires them to do work. It requires them to deliver you information, data, something. For us, it's creativity. They have to, create landing pages. They have to create emails, and you got to get them doing those things. So keeping them engaged, making those things small, because people will feel overwhelmed if you make them too large. So make it small, make it easy, help them along the way, and give them a deadline. We create SOWs that we roll out early on in the process that say, here's what we're going to do for you, but you have to deliver these other things by these dates, or this whole thing gets off track.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's good. That's good advice. Christian, what has been your experiences with this? What challenges have you had?
Yeah, I think Greg mentioned a little bit on kind of keeping the spark or keeping the excitement alive after the sale. We often work with like state institutions where sometimes that contract process after someone says yes takes a while, and it's almost suddenly you're like, you have to recreate it all over again. So even what we sometimes do is just help them in good faith. Like, hey, I know we're working in the contract, but here's some things you can already do while you're preparing for this, so that when we're actually full on engaging, we're not starting back from zero, right? And we're keeping them engaged through that. And once in a while you get burned and maybe the contract doesn't go through or something happens and you're kind of did a little bit of work, without anything. But I think that's been really helpful. And I think for us, and Greg mentioned a little bit too, is trying to do too much, right? Like within the first, there's a lot in the platform, and really honing down on, I know you can do all of these things, but that's going to take some time. So how can you do small steps? And what we usually do, we work in an environment where a lot of whether the schools or professional teams, they're very similar. So sharing examples of here's how other customers, here's how other partners have done similar things, and really making it tangible for a customer to see what it would be, and how they can actually roll it out, and that's been done before. That it's not just the customer success team at Game Plan telling them that you can roll it out, showing them that some of their peers have done the same thing. And for us, one thing we see is sometimes there's all the silos within an organization, and sometimes initially there's maybe a little too many people on the onboarding call. So we have 5 people working in 5 different departments that all want to kind of accomplish 5 different things, and getting everyone on the same page. So we always try to see kind of we call it our MVP, like what's the person that's really going to drive this and kind of pull everyone together, and how can we help that person initially get the win, because that's usually the person that helps to pull all the other kind of siloed people into it. So I think that's for us where sometimes on the initial call, even before we have a larger onboarding, we have a call with that person to kind of give us guidance on, okay, within your organization, how are decisions made and how are some of these things done, to kind of navigate around, people kind of having their own goals and their own agendas too.
Yeah, that's really good. And you mentioned something there that I want to reemphasize, because I thought it was a really good piece of advice for people that aren't doing this, is around, when the sale gets close to the end, right? You're in final negotiations or you're in legal. There's no reason why you can't start this customer success process, right? I mean, there's a little bit of risk in that you're burning some time, and if the deal doesn't close, you've wasted some cycles. But when the deal does close, you're so much farther out of the gate than you would be starting over, because sometimes legal takes a little while, procurement takes a little while, and you could lose some of that energy. And if you guys can keep that excitement and energy strong and already get some stuff out of the way, so that when the contract is signed, you can actually get to work and start producing results, that's a great feeling for the customer. Yeah, so good stuff. So next up, we have another poll that leads into our next topic. So we talked about quick wins. We heard some examples of them, and we want to talk about, like, how, from the audience's companies, how often do you get feedback and evidence from your customers that they've recognized the value, this early value, these tangible quick wins that you've provided them? Because oftentimes you think you're doing it, but unless they say, yeah, like you accomplished something for us, and we feel like we're that closer to using your platform, or we've achieved something in the first 2 weeks, you need them to tell you that, right? So we want to hear, does your team get documented evidence or agreement from customers as you deliver these quick wins? We'll keep this open for 30 to 45 seconds, and then we'll chat about the results. Okay, so we're back, and it looks like only 23% of participants said that their company gets these tangible quick win, like, acknowledgments back from their customers, and about 76% either don't or don't know. So Greg, That's what the poll says. Is that what you'd expect? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I would expect. I mean, this is hard. This is really hard. Setting up feedback loops that work. It's a difficult thing, and I think there's two things going on here. One is buried underneath the question a little bit, which is getting some sort of a agreement on expectations before you go into the quick wins, right? Part of it is understanding their value, their true value, but also, I mean, the reason that we do an SOW is so that we are setting very clear expectations on what they can expect from us, what we're going to deliver. And then at the end, we can look back at that and say, yeah, we did all of these things. And it's a way for us to walk them down that sort of wins and value trail that we've provided. I mean, hopefully we got the value right to begin with. And then the other side of it is, how often do you need to get feedback? You're not going to be able to get it after every win. You're not going to necessarily know. We do a high touch onboarding where we do phone calls with them and Zoom calls with our customers multiple times a week. So we can hear that feedback, but if you're not doing high touch, you're going to have to find places to probably send out some sort of a survey, calculate some sort of an onboarding score or something that gives you an idea of whether they, at the end of onboarding or 30 days in, 60 days in, they feel like they're getting the value from all the wins that you're providing or not. So a lot of it is just, it's an operational thing that you just have to do. You have to find a way to put these checkpoints in to check the temperature of the customers and how they're doing.
Okay, thank you. Christian, what are your thoughts on this? How do you guys handle it?
Yeah, I mean, very similar to what Greg was saying. I think setting up not being too broad with the goals and manufacturing the goals as to what the customer wants to accomplish. So we kind of do, on the first initial onboarding, we set those goals for the 30, 45, 60, but we use it in their words. So whatever they told us back then is what we try to deliver on. Obviously, we try to guide them towards what those should be, but what we found is a little bit easier for people to kind of tell them how they feel about the goals that they set themselves than if we kind of impose the goals onto them, because it's very easy then to say, well, within our organization, we can't really do this, right? Or with the way we do things, with our processes, it's really hard. So we do a little bit of kind of putting it on the customer, of kind of working with us to identify those goals. And at the end of the first onboarding call, we do have the last 10 minutes and we say, hey, do we hear you right? Like, here's what you want to accomplish 30, 45, 60 days out. And then kind of, whether it's through a survey, if it's like a lower touch model, but we're pretty hands-on too on those phone calls, kind of keeping in the beginning of each of these calls saying, how are we performing against these goals that you told us were the most important initially? But yeah, I think it's hard. I think especially once you get more broad and you do maybe a little bit more low touch, I think survey, like in-app messaging, or we have kind of questionnaires in our courses, for example, where they're getting the feedback from the athletes, but that might not be necessarily the same as the administration, right? So kind of deciphering between those two as well.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Now, follow-on question to this, like, is there any, let's say that you guys have done what you guys have in the quick win plan, like that, hey, we're going to do this thing in by week 3, and it gets accomplished, at least from y'all's perspective. Other than a survey, is there any like communication that would get sent out to, let's say, like, because sometimes the buyer is different than the user, right? And there's the buyer that you want to know that you accomplished something really quickly and make them feel good about their purchase. Do you guys do anything to communicate to like the original purchasing committee or stakeholders that make sure that they feel good about their purchase while you're accomplishing some things quickly? And so the question there is, if anything, like, what do you communicate and how do you communicate it? Oh, sorry, I got to direct this at a person. Christian, why don't you take this one first?
Yeah, I think what you mentioned is kind of what we run into a lot. Is the person who bought it might not be the person who's the main user afterwards, right? So how can we kind of get back to the main people, the decision maker, on, hey, this is actually working, this is value to your investment. So what we try to do is, get marketing involved, and we built these little case studies that are combining kind of, here's the process, here's what we accomplished, and then feedback. And we try to do both the administrative side and then the athlete, who at the end of the day is kind of the end user, so that whoever's purchasing it kind of feels like, okay, from an operational standpoint, we feel good that our administrators are using it the right way, but this is actually also positively resonating with, you know, in our case, like the athlete who's the end user, who they're buying it for, you know, at the end of the day. So so for us, we usually build it's you know, especially with COVID now, it's a little video testimonial we get the main person. We built like an online case study, and then luckily what we have through the courses, we can get the athlete feedback because it's part of the course that they're going through. So then just compiling and sharing that data as part of that case study. And then we ask our customers, and most of the time we're doing it, is we actually ask them if they want to host a call with the decision maker where we can walk them through that process and kind of explain how it works and kind of give them the high level overview. We've seen that it really creates a good relationship with that main user because they're feeling like we're helping them look good in front of, you know, whoever they're reporting to. But it also, I think it shows that commitment to the decision maker, that we're not just going to contact you in the sales process and in the, you know, in the renewal process, right? We're actually doing it throughout the time and making sure that maybe we can get some insights for you what we can do better or things like that. So that's usually what we try to focus on, is kind of creating these like micro case studies that we can then help our main user kind of sell it up to, you know, one step above them or two steps above them.
Yeah, that's great. Greg, how about you? How do you guys do things at SharpSpring?
Yeah, so we have a couple of ways of doing this and kind of showing off the value, or at least continuing to check the temperature of the relationship. The first one that I would say is from a reporting standpoint, we have in-app newsletters that are triggered every month that go out to all the admin users of the account, which anyone who was a purchaser on the account is an admin user. And if you know, because it's a marketing automation platform, it's not really showing the quick wins exactly. What it's doing is the results. It's saying, this is what you got, this is how big is on your website. And it's giving a lot of data that they want. That's why they bought the tool to begin with. How many leads am I getting, right? So we're reporting on that to them month to month. And then after onboarding, we have a account management team that takes over and periodically does health checks. And the health checks, they're not just, hey, how are you doing? Are you cool? It's a very prescriptive questionnaire that we have on our side. We're not just asking questions, but we're having a conversation. And those questions that we have internally need to be answered. And a lot of them are you meeting your goals? Are you getting, you know, is this customer happy with SharpSpring? Would they refer the platform to others? And so there's a lot of things like that we do. And then those health checks help us to determine what the next steps are. Is this customer maybe high risk, or are they potentially ready for growth? And do they need to have a strategy call, like an executive business review or something like that? And so that's kind of how we manage it.
Got it. Yeah, perfect. That's really good thoughts. Thanks for sharing those. Okay. Next up, we have what I think is our last poll. And so what we want to understand now is the impact of these initiatives, right? So first, you know, who out there from our audience has an understanding of what the impact of these quick wins are? So the question is, my company has data providing my data proving quick wins leads to faster adoption and higher renewal rates. So again, we'll leave this poll open for 30, 45 seconds or so, collect some results, and then talk about them. Okay, we're back. I had a feeling that this one was going to have some results that were a little bit lower than our first question, but it looks like only 14% said that they have data proving that these things are actually working and having an impact. 48% don't have data, and another 38% don't know. So let's see. Christian, that's what the poll results showed. What do you think about that? Is that what you expected?
Yeah, I think the data, having the data that your early wins are hitting or not, I think is a little easier than saying, is that the main reason someone does or does not renew at the end of the year, if it's a yearly deal. I think we looked at data that shows us that those that do renew early, that do get their onboarding done and get these early wins, almost all tend to renew. And if they're not, there's some type of churn associated with that. But I think it's, I kind of expected it to be hard to tie it exactly to that. I think we can tie it on our company, at least we tie it on the positive end. I think we can say, if we get this person off to a good start, it'll be a much smoother sailing. But I think it's a little harder to say, okay, if they're not getting it, is that automatically leading to them not having a good experience, right? And not having that, or is that just kind of a delay in that satisfaction? I think that's the harder part, at least when we're looking at it.
Yeah, this was definitely a tough one. Greg, how do you think about this question and those results?
Yeah, I mean, I think whether you have data or not that shows this, it's highly likely that this question is true. Like that you can get faster adoption and higher renewal rates with quick wins. But I also think there's a little bit of, is it correlation or causality in here? And that's really hard to prove. And I think that's kind of what Christian was hinting at, is it's really hard to prove that your renewal rates a year later are tied to this, quick wins. However, what I can almost guarantee across the board in any software, any organization where you're onboarding people into a new piece of software, that for those that don't have quick wins, or you're not getting the wins fast enough, you are probably experiencing a high amount of disengagement from your customers. They're starting to miss calls. They're starting to, not log into the app as often, not, do the things that they need to do to be successful. So you will see that, which will also lead to, slower adoption, even on average, slower adoption. So what you'll find is that when those people are met at the point of sale with a quick handoff and a quick onboarding start, and then you get quick wins with them, more often than not, those people will stick with you longer, they will adopt faster, and their lifetime value is higher. That is just true. So finding those ways that you can track it and get your data points for that, I think it's really important, because it's not necessarily going to prove to you that it's a worthwhile activity, but what it's going to prove to you is how good you are at it now and how much better you can be about it in the future.
Yeah, it seems like a good approach to this would be, start measuring or start documenting your quick wins, so you know which accounts you successfully provided those to, and then you can maybe do some correlation to see, okay, has the adoption rate of those accounts gotten to a faster start than customers where they didn't realize those quick wins, and then you can quantify the level of importance of them. And then a year later, there's probably going to be some type of correlation to renewal or churn, but you could do some faster correlation based on adoption rates.
Yep. This is a big data exercise. I love data, so it's a lot of fun, but it's not necessarily easy to get at.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's go on to our next topic. And by the way, to the audience, if there's any questions as we're going through this or digging into the topics, feel free to type them into the question box. Don't feel shy about asking. I'll infuse them into the conversation as we continue on. So, okay, let's have a chat about how the approach to quick wins differs for different types of companies. And I know you might have to do a little bit of speculation here because you guys do things the way you do things, but there's other companies out there that offer freemium offerings, trials that maybe the CS teams don't get engaged in, self-service, and sometimes those are big accounts, but they just want to self-service and operate on their own, right? And so you don't get to have the level of engagement, one-on-one interaction with those accounts. But if you can still somehow deliver quick wins to them early, then they might convert into a paid customer. They might convert into a higher value account where you can then, put a CSM on them and have that one-to-one interaction. So I'm assuming this matters to some folks in the audience, which is why I brought this topic up. But how would you advise them to think about delivering time to value quickly when you don't have a lot of one-on-one engagement with the actual users? Greg, please, if you don't mind kicking us off here.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, I mean, so we have the high touch model. We don't offer free trials at the moment. So when people come in, we work very hard with our team in a service-based approach to deliver that time to value. And I think we are able to, even though we're very much data driven and make a lot of decisions based on that, but we are able to adapt and to change based on the feedback we're getting from the partner. And we put a little bit of that into the hands of our individual CSMs that are doing the onboarding. When you have a product-led growth type organization where free trials is how people find their way into your product, all of that stuff pretty much needs to be done through some programmatic way of working, and sometimes you can have your sales team do it, but it makes it a little more difficult because it's not someone's full-time job to do that thing, or you have to be very clear about how you're delivering those wins and how quickly you can deliver them and build it all into product. So it's very expensive to do all the research and to build it up front. Whereas for us, with a little more high touch on the back end, we can spend a little bit more time, figure it out, iterate on the process over time, and then hopefully build it, automate it as we have worked it out and made it exactly what it needs to be.
Yeah, got it. Thanks for sharing your insights there. Christian, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, most of our customers are more high touch, but we do have instances where an organization will basically pay for having our software installed into different organizations, right? So whether that's a sponsor or, for example, a professional league paying for the professional team, where they're basically getting our software for free, but they're getting a limited version of it, and it's still in our best interest to kind of try to convert them into paying customers. So I think what we do there is we kind of identify, since we can't do it as high touch, identify what are usually the 2 or 3 stickiest items for that user type, and we kind of discern by, is this a youth organization, is this college, or is this pro, and then kind of work backwards from there. But make sure that through that free trial, what we've seen is usually in the first 15 days of that free trial, they're almost making the decision on, is this something I want to spend more time with game plan on talking to them about, or is this just what I'm going to use for free? And kind of after that, it's getting a lot harder to re-engage them. So what we try to do through kind of in-app messaging and other documents that we provide to them when they sign up, like via email and things, is how can we maximize those first 15 days and put them on a path where, whether it's one sticky feature or 2, how can they actually get something accomplished that kind of shows them how good it would be if they would have this across their whole organization as part of the full subscription. So we almost, we build kind of these different paths, but they're always very focused on one feature so that they can see the value in one feature, and then kind of say, through in-app messaging or our sales people or our customer success people engaging, saying, hey, I know you've had really good success with X. Why don't I show you how you could have more success with Y and Z if you want to look at the full platform? And so I think that's what we've done on that, is kind of build these pathways of, you're coming in, you're answering a couple of questions during that onboarding for that free trial, and then we're putting you on a path that kind of leads you towards 1 or 2 features, and then kind of tracking on, if they're successful, then they're often the ones where we might spend some time trying to figure out how to convert the customer. If they're not successful with that, then it's going to be a hard conversation around, turning them into a paying customer if they're not getting the value out of the free version already, right? So I think that's kind of a little bit the danger with the free trial sometimes. Is if you're not really providing value with the free trial, then it might hurt a little bit more than help, because people might get a taste in their mouth about your product that's not necessarily accurate to what the full solution might look like.
That's right. And so I'll take this question and kind of tweak it a little bit also, because so same question, but how do you provide value to like the users that you don't like? It's a paying customer and they're a good sized customer, and you got a CSM, focusing on them, but they're not going to engage with every user, right? So maybe there's a power user, the sponsor, and some members of their team, and maybe there's another 20 users that aren't in front of the CSM very often. How do you think about those users and how you can, show them some quick wins or some early value that keeps them engaged with your product also? I know it's kind of a random question, but Greg, you want to take a whack at this one?
Yeah, I think, in a short, very short sentence, gamification, right? Like how in-app messaging, finding ways to trigger off of something that they're doing behavior-wise inside the app that you can then present to them an option for either congratulations, you've hit this milestone, you've done this thing, you won this badge, whatever you can do there, or even just those tool tips and messages to help them keep them between the ditches, I guess, if you put it that way, help guide them in the right way. So
cool. Christian, any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think for us, away from the power user that is going to interact with us a lot, is kind of knowing how the rest of that organization looks like, right? So for us, for example, a coach would care about something completely different than maybe the athletic director would, right? From what they're looking for with our platform. So if we're trying to engage them, really customizing, whether it's in-app messaging or it's documents we send them, to how it helps their job, since they're not going to be the power user that looks at it holistically, maybe narrowing the playbook down to say, hey, but you can do this one thing, and your power users are using it, so you're seeing the ROI on our platform, and that's all good. But for yourself, here's maybe one feature that really would help you in your job, and really kind of honing in on a smaller, they're not going to spend as much time on the platform, so how do we help them kind of narrow down their playbook and their scope a little bit too?
Yeah, that's really good. I like the idea of focusing on something simple just to get them realizing some value and then building from there. I think that's really smart. We did have a question come in on this topic. So this is from Jeanette, and it's, what about people who don't log in, right? You guys talked a little bit about in-app messaging, which is really useful, right? When they log in, but when they don't log in-app messaging doesn't really do you any good. So how do you try to keep them engaged and logging back in? Because sometimes it's difficult to do that. So Greg, I'm gonna go to you for this one, because you guys have a customer marketing pro, you have a marketing automation tool. So I'm sure there's going to be some answers related to what you guys do, but try to keep it, broader and focused.
Yes, marketing automation is the answer. When you realize somebody's not logging in, you send them an email, give them
as many emails as you can.
As many emails as you can in a sequence you automate. So yeah, I think it's a great point. There are people that once they go dark in the app, in-app messaging no longer helps them. You need to have some sort of a trigger that notifies your CSM, notifies somebody to, hey, this person hasn't logged in this many days, and you need to reach out. And that's what our account management team does. We have tons of alerts set up inside of our app that let our team know. It could be that they missed a payment. It could be that they added a new client. You get a number of added a new user. These are all things that we get alerts about, and then we immediately have our team reach out, email, a couple of phone calls. If the person is disengaged, after a few attempts, then we let it go. But we certainly try to reach out to everyone and help them. And I think one of the keys to that too is that you have to make sure that you have a purpose for reaching out. a lot of people won't respond if you're not delivering some sort of value to them or they don't believe you are. So you need to make sure that your messaging is really clear about why you're reaching out and how you can help them solve whatever problem they're trying to solve.
Yeah, that's good. I was hoping you were gonna say some of those things, because I wouldn't forget the art of the phone call. You know, a lot of people don't make phone calls anymore today. It's harder to reach people because they don't have corporate lines. Everybody's on their cell phone, but you know, you leave a good voicemail saying, hey, I just left you something in your inbox that might be useful for you. Hope you can check it out. We can talk soon. Like the art of having phone conversations, voicemail, even direct mail, like those things sometimes do actually work because everybody's so inundated with email these days. So certainly something to keep in mind. Christian, what are your thoughts on this? How would you guys do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to add to that, I think it's also like, how do you, I think two things. One, like when it's going well, are you still making those phone calls and are you still being as engaged? You know, I think sometimes we have the kind of thing, oh, this account's doing well, let me spend some more time here. But I think if you're as communicative with a customer when they're doing well, then if something goes where they're not logging in, I think it's a little easier because it doesn't feel like you're just reaching out to them because they're not logging in. But I think the other thing from us too is just kind of like growing the power user base within the organization, so that if your one power user isn't logging in, you're not like necessarily sounding the alarm bells yet, because you have 4 or 5 other ones that are major advocates and major users within that organization. Where if you only have the one and then that person's not logging in, you're getting really worried, right? So and I think that's what we're trying to do when things are going well, to kind of mushroom out within the organization. But I think to Greg's point, like having a purpose when you call or a purpose when you email, so it doesn't just seem like, hey, I got a notification that says this person hasn't logged in 30 days, and I'm basically just reaching out because of that. So I think having some value when you're doing those engagements is, kind of what we try to focus on too.
Yeah, I mean, I'd want to add on to that too, that, you know, the idea of only reaching out when you notice something negative is happening, like at that point, you've pretty much lost them. You know, it's going to be hard to re-engage somebody who's 30 days past logging in. So I'm always a big proponent of solving the upstream problem, and that is keep them engaged, right? If you keep them engaged, then you won't be fighting their attrition on the back end. So do those things proactively that keep people engaged in your application.
Yeah, I was about to comment on that when you got to it first. I thought that was great, and the whole purpose of this webinar, thinking about the quick wins, right? It's building that relationship off on the right start, building trust really early, and then to what you just said, keeping that trust by continuing to communicate with them even when they're happy, and that way it'd be hard for them to disengage because you have a really strong relationship with them. The other thing that I would suggest, and this just popped into my mind as you guys were talking, is leverage your power sponsor, right, to get those people back engaged, right? If you can't reach them directly, call somebody who is engaged and say, hey, can we get this person on the phone? I want to show them something. We have a feature that might really benefit them. And if you think it would benefit them, let's get them on the phone together and show it to them. That might be something that you can do as well. Okay, awesome. Thanks for those comments. We're on to our last topic here. And so we covered a lot of scenarios about how to deliver quick wins. It sounds like there's a lot of support in the fact that this is an important topic, which is great. But how do you help it scale, right? Oops, that will pop up. How do you help that? How do you scale that for your organization? So as your customer base grows, how can you continue to deliver these quick wins to more and more people, to more and more customers as things grow? So, Greg, how do you guys think about this at SharpSpring?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of growing through this very issue right now. I mean, SharpSpring's grown tremendously over the last few years. We're only an 8-year-old company, so we're experiencing some crazy growth. And whereas our differentiator has always sort of been our one-to-one guidance through onboarding, that's one of those value props that we even talk about in our sales process. It's very difficult to scale that to one-on-one. We've had to hire a lot of onboarders to do it, and they're fantastic at their job, but we've got to find a way to shrink the amount of time we're spending. The a 60-day onboarding needs to be a 45-day onboarding or 30-day onboarding. So how do we do that? There's a couple of answers. One is it has to be partially programmatic. It has to be something in the app that is supporting them. We've developed some one-to-many trainings and webinars and things that we can deliver some of that value so that it's not all one-on-one. We still don't want to lose the one-on-one because that is, again, part of our differentiator. But then also we've had to embrace asynchronous communication. Sometimes it's easier for our team to be able to record a quick video and send it off to somebody instead of trying to sync up on a one-to-one phone call. It still feels personalized. It still feels one-on-one, but it's not. You don't have to have the two people in your calendars aligned and everything. You can just get a question and send it back off. So there's a couple of ways that we've been able to scale that as we grow. And we're going to have to continue to work on new ways as we get larger and larger and start to outgrow even those.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you for your thoughts there, Greg. Christian, how do you guys think about this a game plan as you guys are growing?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's my German background, but I love structures and processes and things like that. But so I think what we try to do is build those structures for our CSMs while not losing kind of the personalization of it, right? So we have like 5 or 6 onboarding tasks that based on the initial conversation with the customer, we can kind of slot someone in where the CSM can then tweak it a little bit, but they have a lot more guidance around what are the things I got to hit with this type of customer, right? And I think it starts with kind of the handoff between sales and customer success. Like, do we get that customer in? And is our CSM already pretty educated on what that customer is looking for? And we've seen that cut down the initial time. And I think to Greg's point, we want to get on the phone as often as possible, but how do you use the time between the phone calls, right? Whether it's recording a quick video or do you have training material from, that's already set up, where it's not where the work is only done while you're on the phone with someone and then they kind of forget about it. So leaving those calls with really clear action items for a customer to say, here's what we need you to get done before we do the next call. But not making them too daunting where they're saying that, oh, wow, to get this done, it's going to take me 45 days. So let's talk again in a month and a half from now. So kind of teaching them along the process, but still making sure that it feels customized. But I think on the back end for us to say, here's kind of the path they're in, and that way we can also evaluate on, here are the 5 kind of problem accounts that we maybe want to spend some more time on as a team and think, creatively around how to help them, where these other accounts are doing really well and we can just kind of keep, checking the boxes. So I think that's a really big part of having that process in place.
Yeah, makes sense. Really good comments. Okay, so it looks like we're getting close to 3 o'clock here. And so, unfortunately, that brings us to the end of the conversation. So we're going to have to wrap up. Really appreciate y'all's time and preparation for today's discussion. So I want to give a huge thank you to Greg and Christian for sharing their insights and expertise. I hope everybody found it useful. Keep an eye out. We're going to share the presentation and the video recording out on our website and on our YouTube channel. If anybody has any customer success topics that they'd like to see us host a discussion about, feel free to shoot me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn. And we do these monthly or so. And so happy to take whatever ideas you have into consideration. So anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week and a happy Thanksgiving next week.
Thank you.